All month, we have been rolling out the best ideas for your Thanksgiving meal, and it might be a good idea to double up on this recipe, so pay attention. On the menu, buttery, flaky, tender rolls that you will want to peel apart slowly and eat. We're making these large homemade crescent rolls, and Heather Thomas is joining me to share one of her most favorite loved recipes. Heather, hi, how are you?
Hi, great. Thanks so much for having me today.
Oh, so good to have you. Okay, tell us why this is your favorite roll recipe right now.
Okay, so this is a roll recipe that's near and dear to my heart, but crescent dinner rolls are just the perfect roll for a holiday table, right? They're a little bit fancier than just a round bun roll. These rolls are super soft and fluffy and buttery, and they're a little bit sweet, so they're perfect for savory meals like Thanksgiving, and they're excellent for leftover turkey sandwiches.
That's exactly where I was going with this. I want to layer that with a turkey sandwich. Okay, tell me, you have got a crazy story about the demand for these rolls. How did you get yourself into this situation?
Okay, yeah, it is a little bit crazy. So before I started sharing my recipes through my website and my blog, I ran a home bakery for about 10 years, and it was a super busy home bakery, let me tell you. So during the week of Thanksgiving, my crew and I would make 1,300 dozen of these crescent rolls for all of my customers just for that week alone. And we would work around the clock for 3 days straight trying to get everybody's rolls ready. But we would, just to put it in a little bit of perspective, I used over 1,000 pounds of flour, over 1,300 eggs, over 125 pounds of butter. It was all out of my house, so you can imagine it was it was a little crazy, but it became a really fun family event for us during that week. It was just a lot of crazy, but a lot of fun.
I'm just looking at those photos and all the flour stacked up on your fireplace, and I'm sure it smelled amazing in your house for weeks. Okay, let's jump right into the recipe. Tell us what we need.
Okay, so we are using, this is a dough recipe that I really love to use. It's my master roll dough recipe. And just to get it to that right consistency that we need to make them nice and tender and fluffy, we need to make sure that we're not adding too much flour. So when you are mixing these up, you're going to add just about half of your flour initially and get all of the ingredients incorporated together. And then once, I'm going to turn my mixer on here for just a second. So when you feel like your dough is pulling away from the sides of that bowl, it's looking really consistent and smooth, you're going to stop your mixer, because this is key to this recipe. It can look a little bit stickier than it really is, but you're just going to use the touch test. So you're going to lightly tap on your dough with your finger. And if it comes away clean, then you have added enough flour. It's time to stop adding flour, because you want to add as little flour as possible to keep them nice and tender and keep them from drying out.
Oh, that's a good tip. I sometimes over add when it comes to flours. Okay, I got to ask you, I'm the one who reaches for the biggest roll, so how do I make sure all the rolls are consistent and have that good shape to them?
Okay, well, I'm going to show you how we roll these out. So once you've let your dough proof, we're going to do one proof before we divide it up and shape it. So you're going to flour your work surface here, and we're just going to roll this out into a circle about 1/4 of an inch thick. And we're going to kind of divide this up like we would a pizza. So you're going to you don't have to make it a perfect circle, because once it rises and puffs up, all of your imperfections are going to be gone. So we're going to use a pizza cutter. We're going to cut it into 12 wedges. And if you have a hard time getting these to be the same size, then I have a super easy trick for you.
That's what I need to know.
Once you've got it cut up into 12 wedges here, you're going to kind of look at your wedges, and you're going to see if there's any larger ones or smaller ones, and you can just snip off a little bit of dough. Say I've got a really big one right here. You can just snip off a little bit of dough and add it to a smaller one. And then once you get them all evened out, you can just press that dough into your crescent roll and just roll it up like that. And that's going to give you nice, uniform, equal-sized rolls.
Oh yeah, honestly, that was like so simple, and I didn't even think to do that. I just was like, okay, you get the big one, you get the small one, that's fine.
Right.
How do you spread them out in the pan? How much room do they need so they're not cramming each other?
Right. Okay, so I've got a few here, and what we're gonna do, you can line them up side by side here, touching the ends. And if you're using a standard half sheet, this is just a standard size baking sheet, you can do 6 rows of 3. So I like to space them about 2 inches apart, the rows 2 inches apart, but it's totally fine if these edges are touching because they're just gonna bake into each other. And once you grab them off the pan, they're going to just pull apart and be light and fluffy and delicious.
Oh, I'm so excited for this recipe. This is so cool, Heather. Okay, the question a lot of people probably have right now is because they're already starting to cook and prep for Thanksgiving. Can we make these now and freeze them? And what is that like? Does that change the consistency of the roll?
Oh, yes. So now is the time to prepare for Thanksgiving. If you want to have freshly baked rolls and take some of the stress out of it. So I do this all the time. I will put my rolls onto my baking sheet, and before they start to rise, I'll just pop this whole baking sheet right into my freezer and freeze the rolls. It usually takes about 24 hours, and you just want to make sure that they're frozen solid. Then once they are frozen, you can just pop them right off this pan and put them in a Ziploc. You can store them in your freezer for up to 8 weeks. And then you can just pull them out a few hours before you want to bake them and let them rise on your pan. And you can have rolls straight out of the oven in time for Thanksgiving. And then you don't have to start all the way from scratch.
Oh, I dare say that, you know, some people say turkey is the most important thing. The roll, in my opinion, Heather, is the most important part of Thanksgiving. I have people in the studio nodding their heads in agreement. Where can we find more recipes and ideas from you?
Well, you can find my website at thatbreadlady.com, and I'm also posting videos all the time on Instagram at thatbreadlady.
All right, Heather Thomas, thank you so much for sharing your recipe with us. We appreciate it. And of course, you can find the recipe for homemade Crescent dinner rolls on our Studio 5 website. We will link that for you, so it's an easy connection point. You can find all of our Thanksgiving recipes under that tab as well. Our thanks again to Heather Thomas for that insight into the best buttery roll you can make for Thanksgiving.